Joining us right now on Outspoken is Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego. Senator Gallego, first off, appreciate you making some time for us today on what is decidedly a busy day. I wanted to get your initial reaction to kind of what's happened. I don't even know what to say. The last hour, 24 hours, 3 days, like where do you even start with this?
Well, I think the most place to start is like, what does this mean to Arizonans, right? And what does this mean to the security of our country? The most important thing to understand is that, I think most Americans do not want another direct involvement in war, especially someone like me who suffered the consequences of a very bad war in the Iraq War. I want to make sure we avoid that. And acted in a way that potentially could escalate us into a war. Now, I hope it doesn't happen. I obviously want also Iran not to have a nuclear weapon. And I think we should try to do everything we can by diplomatic means before that. So, I'm hoping that at the end of the day that what we find ourselves is, A, number one, not in a war. B, Iran does not have a nuclear weapon or is moving towards a nuclear weapon. And more importantly, we could concentrate back on what the American public wants us to concentrate on, which is the cost of living, what's going on in the economy, all these things right now that are being more and more distracted by, essentially this war, I think that potentially is coming.
Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego is joining us. So Trump bombs Iran, and you are for or against it?
I'm against bombing Iran until I know full details about exactly what was the reasoning we had to do it right now, right? You have to explain to me why we gave up on the option of having a peaceful outcome through diplomatic means to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon versus taking this very risky opportunity that may or may not have succeeded, by the way. That's the other problem. That could escalate us into a war, right? At the end of the day, if we could have stopped Iran from getting a nuclear weapon without dropping a bomb, I think that would have been a successful diplomatic approach that the president could have taken. But now we're basically risking two things. Number one, escalating into war. Number two, for all we know, Iran may have moved around all of their nuclear capabilities, and now we may be in a bigger trouble in terms of being able to stop them from actually being able to get a nuclear weapon going into the future.
So, Senator, you're skeptical that we took everything out. You're skeptical that maybe they moved things before we supposedly took everything out. You're not 100% sure that that it was a successful mission and we wiped out their nuclear capabilities.
I mean, to be honest, I am, and the reason that makes me makes me worried is because if they were able to move all their nuclear capabilities around and we weren't able to degrade it, all we've done is basically put off a timetable of them being able to put a nuclear weapon together. And before we knew where it was all stored, it was monitored. We actually saw it was under this, we'd had cameras on it that international organizations were watching it. Now, for all we know, they've dispersed it all throughout Iran, and they may be moving even faster now to try to get to a nuclear weapon that we may not be able to catch ahead of time. Right. So, again, I worry first about security of the United States, and I want to make sure whatever outcome comes here is that Iran doesn't get a nuclear weapon. I'm not sure that this was actually causing that, and I'm more worried that we could escalate again ourselves into a war.
Senator Gallego, what is, or maybe better, what should be the role of Congress in military action in Iran or the Middle East in general?
Just in general, and not just the Middle East, but around the world, it's Congress's purview for us to actually be able to have input on what's happening. Now, if the president can say, and I want to make sure we're very clear about this because, I think there's some people, and Democrats are kind of being hypocrites about this. If the president can clearly point that there's an imminent threat to the security of this country, and he doesn't have time to come and talk to Congress, then yes, he has a right to defend the country, of course, right? Mm-hmm. We want anyone to do that, whether it was Obama, Biden, Trump, right? But he never has hit that threshold when it comes to the stopping Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. He hasn't explained that to us. He hasn't shown that is actually going to happen in the near future, and they were about to launch a weapon against us or our forces. And that's why, I think what he's done is not good. Now, the other reason, by the way, you want input from Congress is not just because we're going to tell you no or yes. It's also because we could actually give you some, valuable information, some of our thoughts. Sometimes, we get surrounded by people in our own cabinets, our own offices that actually have really bad ideas or have really bad agendas. And I think if had he heard from some members of Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, we would have told them that, this is probably not an imminent threat. We can continue to negotiate. And the American public does not want us involved in another war in the Middle East. They want us to focus on what's happening domestically. Continue the work you're doing, to try and improve the economy. Let's talk about immigration. There's so many things that the American public wants. The last thing they want is another war in the Middle East that's just going to distract us from the priorities of this country.
Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego joining us, Outspoken with Bruce and Gaydos. I'll go a little bit off what you said, Bruce, with your question, push it a little further. So, Trump doesn't have to go and declare war to use military force. I mean, we haven't declared war in this country since 1942.
Yeah.
So I know that Obama launched a ton of strikes on, Yemen and Somalia. Yep. There wasn't a single declaration of war. I think he bombed Libya. There was no congressional approval. So the bottom line that I am seeing, and I'm not a lawmaker, but, I look into it, a president can go to war, but can't stay at war. So...
Well, you just can't call it war.
He doesn't need approval to use military force.
Yeah.
And I think the Democrats are looking at this saying, well, you should have asked us. Well, he doesn't have to ask you. Am I wrong?
He certainly doesn't have to ask you when it's for certain things, right? Protection of our friends, our military personnel, if the country is under imminent threat. And so he didn't do it. There's nothing illegal about it, but I still think, of course, if he is an investor in the country, he should have come and talked to us ahead of time to actually put the case together.
Okay, but doesn't it also mean, and you know this better than anybody because you went to war in Iraq, you know what it's like to lose close friends, and you're a former Marine. I get it. You're a Marine for life. Okay, but isn't there a certain sense we've got to keep this secret. We can't get this out. We've got to hold this plan in a very, very small circle and not let it out because we don't want our guys and gals who are going to fly over and drop all those bombs to get in harm's way. So isn't secrecy a huge part of making what happened on Saturday a success?
Yeah, look, that's not how it works. Normally, what you only notify a couple of members of Congress. And, remember, this president was also already kind of telegraphing what he was going to do. The biggest leaker was himself, and this is why potentially a lot of the nuclear capabilities were moved around. Now, the other thing is, look, this is just a direct issue of what the American public wants. Again, the American public does not want another war in the Middle East. The American public does not want us to escalate into a war that they feel is probably optional. And in my opinion, they would rather give diplomatic solutions an opportunity. Because imagine this, we were already talking to Iran. To give credit to President Trump, he was actually actively talking to Iran about trying to strike a deal for them to stop their nuclear capability, their nuclear weapons production, everything of that nature. And suddenly that kind of just stopped. We ended that plan and then moved right to war. And so I think there's a disconnect that it's not just Congress, but the American public wants to know, what happened? What changed so fast that we went from let's talk to let's bomb? And also, how is this going to end? We don't want another war. We want to focus on the domestic problems that, people have been voting on for the last 4 to 8 years. And this is something that's just a total 180 that people weren't anticipating. It's the leadership of this country should be able to recognize that instead of just trying to kind of gloss over that, this is over and we're ready to move on, because we're not sure that's the case.
But isn't there a difference between war and a military operation? This was one military operation. This isn't war. Do you think we're at war?
Well, yeah.
Do you think we're at war?
Well, that's the problem, right? This could escalate into war, right? And you got to remember, whenever you're shooting, it's somebody that had to shoot, at a lot of bad guys. The bad guys get to shoot back, right? So it's not like we get to do this, make decision on our end. And so what we ask the president, it's what is the plan here? What are we getting into? How are we getting out of this? What is the end result? Does Iran actually have nuclear capability now? We're getting different reports from our own government saying that, yes, they have some centrifuges. Yes, they're able to move some. And then you have Donald Trump himself saying it was obliterated. Those are two very different things. We may actually have ended up helping Iran by giving them a good reason for them to disperse all of their nuclear weapons and their capability to the point where they're going to be able to put it together faster and more covert than it was before. And we just aren't getting those answers from the president. I think that's a legitimate thing that we in the Senate should be asking and the president should be providing.
Senator Gallegos joining us right now. You're in a unique position, not only as a lawmaker, but as a Marine and having actual seen combat. Do you think we will ever get a 100% clear picture of how successful these operations were in Iran? I can't imagine they're going to come forward and tell us the truth.
I think we'll be able to get a fairly good assessment because our military intelligence capability as well as our allies are pretty strong. Will we get it right away? No, this takes time. Number two, we're going to find out pretty soon because Iran right now is going to have to make a decision. You know, if you were just bombed as the country of Iran was by us and by Israel, you're going to try to decide how to best take care of your country. And that potentially could mean that they're going to try to start putting their nuclear weapons together faster in a more covert manner to the point where we may, again, be engaging in a war that we didn't have to because, you know, they're taking care of themselves. The best thing we could do right now, in my opinion, for the president is to go back, negotiate, if there is a possibility to negotiate, try to see where we can bring an understanding with both countries that Iran should not get a nuclear weapon and they should stop being, you know, the aggressor they are in the Middle East, while at the same time making sure that our allies, our men and women in the Middle East are secure. You know, running to shoot is never the best solution because it's very easy to start shooting. It's very hard to stop shooting.
Senator Gallego, Iran retaliated by attacking a U.S. base in Qatar.
Yep.
All those missiles were, you know, destroyed before they ever hit anywhere near. Trump is saying that Iran warned the U.S. they were going to attack, which is super interesting. Iran just did this as, well, we got to show our people that we're not, you know, just lying down and taking it. But hey, guys, we're just going to throw a couple of missiles at you, and you know, we're sure you're going to shoot it down.
That's a good thing, isn't it?
It shows that we've kind of, well, Israel and the United States have kind of crushed them. Is that normal? Do countries who just got whacked call the other country and say, hey, listen, we're just going to throw a couple missiles at your way just to make sure that we save some face?
Well, to be honest, it's more normal than you think, actually.
Okay, really?
Especially because, you know, when countries want to de-escalate out of a situation, you know, they have to give their American public some reason, or their public, you know, for the show of force that they were still fighting. But, you know, they don't clearly want to continue escalating into a deeper war against us. So if that's the only thing that happens, and we actually were able to destroy nuclear capability, then this has been a very successful effort. Now, the problem is they may have just done that to de-escalate us going to further war with them, but there's a good possibility that they were able to spread all of their nuclear capabilities all around Iran, and they're still going to be able to reconstitute a nuclear weapon at some point. That's a very bad scenario. But let's hope it's a good scenario. Like I think the most important thing we as Democrats should want is that we should want that the president was successful with this mission. I disagree that he took it, but he took it, and we should move on. Not move on. We should learn from that. But you know, if it was successful, I think that'd be better for the country. My spidey instinct says that this is probably a mixed bag, and we probably weren't able to actually destroy their whole nuclear capability, and it's going to make it more difficult for us to actually stop Iran going into the future.
Senator, last one. Since Iran targeted the U.S. military base, should we hit them again?
I'd say you first have to, as a Marine, I would say absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, to be honest, right? I would say you hit them, and then you hit them 35 times more just to teach them a lesson. But as a leader, as someone that you have to think about, you know, your country and trying to keep your country out of war, you first make an assessment about what actually happened. Were any of our military personnel killed or severely injured? Did they destroy any type of our capability to actually conduct ourselves in defense and in war? And if that didn't happen, and I think that the report's going to come back that we're able to take down all of their 10 missiles, then I don't think we escalate further. Number one, it's not, you're not really matching where the public is. The public does not want more war. And when you've kind of seen what is a very weird olive branch being thrown at you, you should take it. And as much as like my pride I'd have to suck up my pride. I think that's the best thing you should do for the country, and try to move back to the peace table, and keep our country secure and keep our allies secure.
Senator Gallego, sincerely appreciate your time, and also let us congratulate you on the newborn.
Yeah, congrats.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
All right. Good luck.
Thanks, Senator.
Adios.
Thanks for watching Outspoken with Bruce and Gaydos. Tap to watch more from KTAR News and click the button in the middle to subscribe.